Hello.
Hi. Hello, can you hear me?
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
All right. Good evening. I hope you guys can hear me. How has your day been?
Very well, thank you, sir.
Good
All right.
afternoon.
All
I can
right.
hear you.
Good. Good evening. All right. So, all right. So today will be to get you guys a little bit ahead. So today will be one of the days that is the last days that our sessions or our classes will be heavily theoretical. Okay. So, because there are a lot of concepts that I want us to talk about really well before we start getting into the back end, the framework specific concepts. In fact, even from the framework specific concepts, we are still going to take those things and apply the general idea into different frameworks. So, I will start the class by showing you guys how to install some necessary tools. So some people mentioned that at the end of the previous class that how could they install the tools on their own laptops, and I realized that we could have a complete session for that. I wanted to make a demo video as well to show you guys how to install, but uh, I just created a different setup on Windows, like different accounts. So that's where we are going to show you guys how to install the stuff you would be using. Okay. So let me share my entire screen now so that you can see everything. So I want to believe my screen is now showing on you guys' end and that you can also hear me well. So we primarily need two major tools or two major software to install. The first one is the JavaScript runtime, the environment where our code is going to be running on, and that is Node.js. In the previous class, I told you that Node.js is not the only JavaScript runtime that we have. There's something also called Bon, and that's the real advantage of having a JavaScript runtime and what it really does for the JavaScript world is that it allows us to build anything that we want using JavaScript. In this case, you really care about building applications on the server, building server-side applications. Of course, to work anything in the front-end world, JavaScript is almost it's very, very important. I don't know how you can scale or build anything really without using JavaScript. So people from the front end are very quite familiar with the importance of JavaScript. So, and the advantage of having a runtime is that for this JavaScript stack is that it allows you to do your front end work and your back end work in a single language. So first thing you want to do is to come here to Node website. You can easily come here by just searching download Node.js on Google. That's how I came with that. So you just come here and you're good. Okay, so when you are there, we have different options to download Node and install it on your computer. You could either use the package manager, which gives you some instructions, or you could use your pre-built installer, which is the option that we're going to use. Or you could also have the pre-built binaries as well. And or you could also build it from source code if you want. So the easiest option is to just take the pre-built installer and then you pick your options. Okay. So say for example, you want to have your project running on a certain version that is available. You can also decide to pick the version that is there. So the default is to pick the long time support. That's what the LTS there means. It says long time support. So that's the option to that is literally that is the default, and that's what you should pick. And then you should come here, you say, I want that version of Node.js for Windows. That's your operating system. could either have it on Windows, Mac, and Linux. Okay, so I'm using a Windows laptop, so we have that. And then you pick your architecture. So either 6486 or your CPU is on ARM. So basically the default is basically all you need anyway. So you just download your node by clicking the button, and you will have your package installer available. So let's do that as well. So when you click on it, some installation wizard is going to basically show up. Okay, so it says that okay, so let's see some space requirements. I'm basically trying to walk you through the entire setup process in case you are confused about that. Okay, some of you might have carried out this step as well, so no problem. You can just accept that. Next, and next. Basically, you could also choose to install the necessary tools if you want. And I think that's a good option actually, since we are completely new to that. So you can decide to automatically install everything. And it also says that you install something called Chocolatey. I'll talk about it shortly. Okay, but you don't really need to worry about that. Just pick up your environment and then you install, and then that's it. So Node.js should start installing on your computer. It's pretty much straightforward process. Okay, so the next tool you want to install is Postman. So Postman is what we use for testing the APIs we are writing. So okay, so some things are coming up here. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, so that came up because I'm using a different account on Windows, which I only set up for this purpose. So on your own end, basically that wouldn't come up. So you can just say download Postman and click the option you have, and then basically the default option should basically be good enough. And you click on the button Windows 64-bit. When you do so, the option to have is already there. I downloaded it so that already because I want us to have an easy installation so we don't waste too much time trying to install things. But I think this Node.js installation is basically done already. So let me see if I can grab that here. So all right, so once you do that, once you click on set up your what's it called, your Postman like I did, it will install the application, and then you have it like that. You could say it brings up something. You can just say you create an account or you log in, but login details are not available on this view. So you can basically just basically just figure your way out as well. You could just say to continue with a lightweight API client, which is basically you're using it without getting all the free features that are available. You could still use it to get your way around. So that's basically that. And one last thing that I want us to see was the command line I was using. So again, this is not something that you need to that is a compulsory step. It's basically just part of my own workflow. You could decide to use the terminal on Windows, or you could decide to download Bash and install and use it, or you could also download your what's it called, an external thing. So I think this is what I use, CMDER. I think I saw it from a friend or somewhere as well. You could decide to install it if you want, but it's not compulsory as well. So you want to, and I think an advantage of it is that you could download the full one, which will come with Git, so that you are able to basically, once you click on that, the installation process is also very easy. Just search, you download, and then you unzip it, and then okay, let's wait for it to install. Basically, shouldn't take more than a couple of minutes. Okay, so basically 3 things we are installing: Node.js, Postman, and optionally your command line emulator. Okay, so one of the reasons why I basically like this one also is that I mean, for me as a person, I really don't like going back and forth between my code and my command line in the same application. So that is why I use this, and I kind of feel like I got so used to it that I never bothered about using the command line on VS Code, or if I want to make use of it, I probably can't. So you probably don't want to be like me. I mean, there's no real difference anyway. It's just a what I call it, just a thing about me. I can't even give a name to it per se. So it's almost done. I should have downloaded it before the class started, but it's fine. I guess we can wait. At least this will give opportunity to those who are not on the call to join. Let me see how many people are available. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 plus 2, 8. I see some names are not here. Maybe they will join us later. Okay. So someone asked me a question in the last class, how to set up Node.js and if it won't affect their existing Python installation. I hope they are on the call currently because this is an answer to the question. So the thing is that your Node.js and your Python, they are not the same. They play very differently. And so when we say they play very differently, it means that it's almost as if you install 2 different applications on your phone or your computer. They play very differently. If you wish, you could have Python installed, Node.js installed, or even Golang, the runtime for the programming language Go. Okay, you could also have all 3 like that installed, and everything will work as the case should be. So that's exactly what is installed on my own computer. So that's why I just mentioned that as well. So everything works really well as well. Okay, so you may want so I believe the command line has installed and you kind of want to extract. Let me see. I hope I remember these are the steps. Oh no, this is taking too slow. Don't worry, I guess we can wait for it. So in case you just want me to get back into the code, you could just let me know if you figure your way out so I don't take too much time on this. And just say something. I don't even, but let me see safe. Okay. Yeah, I don't even know why this came here. All right. Okay. So one of the steps I forgot from the installing your what's it called, the Node.js, yeah, and it's a step I just wanted to this thing is that you could also once you are done installing your Node environment, it will want to install some other packages just like we instructed it to. So when you want to do so, yeah, this window will show up and then you can follow the instructions from there. But I don't want to do that, so let me just close that. But I pretty much believe you'll be able to figure it out. So this should have finished extracting. They're still at 25%. Ugh, that was annoying. But in any case, once it's done extracting, you will come to the folder where I think it will finish soon. It's just all these many files that are there. Things listed around. Okay, so in the meantime, yeah, let me get feedback from you guys. Are you guys hearing me and seeing everything well? And at least if this is worth something to you.
Good evening. Yes, sir.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for responding. All right, thank you as well. Okay, so it will finish shortly, so I'll be able to do this thing. So, okay, while we wait for that as well, you can also preempt me with questions based on previous classes, since this is taking longer than just a minute. Anyone who has a question to ask.
Yeah, I wanted you to just go back to the last class because I was not able to join because of my network. If you can just do just a small revision concerning the last class.
Okay, so as for the last class and stuff like that, classes have been uploaded to YouTube. Okay, so that's the first point of action from your own end. If you miss a class, you can follow up with YouTube as well. So that's first of all. But luckily for you, both last week and this week is a little bit theoretically heavy. And today we conclude that heavy theory discussions that we've been having. So as from next week, it's going to be very what's it called? Code based. Every other thing I'll be talking about will be coming from when I implement the code. So I will make a review because it is part of the activity for today. But I'm saying it now, so you don't expect it for other classes as well. When you miss a class, it's fine. Network goes bad, even for me as well. Okay, so, we understand where the country. So what you want to do is just go and watch it on YouTube as well. Okay, so this is taking really longer than I was hoping. I can even move back to this thing. So yeah, it's just and again, it's not really a compulsory step as well. So all you just want to do is just install Node and install Postman, and you can also use the what's it called, this thing on Windows. So I was going to show you. Let me get it here now. So let me see if, sorry, what's the file this thing for this? I was supposed to get the command. Maybe I can't even have it. CMD. Oh, yeah, that's it. So once you've installed Node and you want to check if everything is running properly, you can just write node dash dash version. Then it should give you a number. So the number is the version of Node.js that you installed. If you check, this says 20.17.0, 20.17.0, which is exactly what we have here. So a good idea is to check that what you installed is running. And you can also launch Postman as well and see that things are working before you start. All right. So basically just, okay, it's almost done now, 97%, so that we can carry on with the class. It's taking about 20 minutes to set up the class. So once it's installed, this is the file, the file, the zipped file downloaded. So when you extract it, you have it in a different folder and you can launch it from there. So blah blah blah, unblock and continue, and then you have this as well. So it will run some post install command and whatever, and you're basically good to go. So once it shows something like this, you are up and running. So the same instruction I wrote on the default Windows command line is node dash dash version, and it came up with that. So let me see. I think this is one of the reasons why I like this all this auto suggestion. are part of the things that are built into this application. I think I'll even need to update the one on my default accounts on Windows. So take advantage of that as well. So those are the things that you have. You have Postman for API testing, Node.js for the actual JavaScript runtime environment, and command line for different things. Okay, so this Postman is also not the only API testing platform available, but it is the most popular. There's also something called, if I remember, I think Thunder Clients. Okay, it's inside of VS Code. So you could also you could install it via an extension, which I'll also show you different things on that as well. So you can check whatever is available out there and pick whatever you want to use. But as far as this class is concerned, we will be using Postman. I will be using Node.js, and you can follow up through whatever means of your command line as well. So you guys will give me a second to switch back to my default account. So because I know, so I'll be able to continue. Okay, so that's the thing. So I will leave and switch to my proper Windows account here. So all right, just give me a sec. All right, can you guys still hear me? All right, I think you should.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, we can.
I'm setting it up on my default profile now, just talking with my phone. So someone asked a question and said their phone is about to go up after everything. The videos are recorded after every session. So you can always check it on YouTube. I will always follow up with the links when it is available. So I'm joining on my computer now. All right, everything should work properly now. It should work. And I should be able to see my screen. Share screen. Okay, good. Let's open green. All right, so just like I said, let me switch to the repository that we have. So cdmlsa-node.js. Okay. All right. So let's get into where we stopped and everything from scratch. So I mentioned 3 tools we will be using. We'll be using Postman. Okay. We'll be using the JavaScript runtime. And then I'll be using the command line as well, which is CMDER. There'll be instructions after the class on how to get set up for everything. But as you saw me do it, it is pretty much straightforward. All right, so that's that. So some other extensions you may want to install on your VS Code is, of course, you have to make use of, you have to use an IDE or a code editor, right? So you can install Visual Studio Code. It's the most popular, and in fact, it is an assumption that you have all of that installed as well. So let's get started. Let's resume our discussion. All right. So one of the things we talked about on Tuesday's class was that was a follow-up of the first class that we started with. We talked about Node.js. We talked about the Express.js framework. We talked about some HTTP methods and their response codes, how to build a simple server, how to structure a simple project. But we couldn't get into the routing topic. So today's class is a continuation of that as well. So, but before we begin, I want to ask a question. How many of us went back to the GitHub repository and tried to replicate the code that we discussed? Let's get it from there. That was an activity after the class. So aside from the person who wasn't able to join, let me know how many of us were able to follow up on that. So before I call, I think I should be calling names now, or you can also volunteer to speak if you replicated the code and did something between then and now.
Good evening. Yeah, I was not aware that it was an activity to look before, or probably I did not hear. Because if I, did you like them say that was we're meant to do that? Because I don't
All
think
right, a
I.
good idea. All right, so a good idea is that whenever code is written or posted somewhere, is that you try and replicate it on your own computer. So first of all, you know that the code is working for you, your setup, installation, and everything is working. And also so that you can build the muscle and mental memory of the syntax of the code you are going to be writing. Understanding the logic of what is done is one thing, but trying to do it on your own is another thing as well. So it's not just a visual based understanding. You actually have to do it yourself. So I may not specifically say that this is a class requirement or an activity or something like that, but it is expected that you take every code sample written as such. That's the reason why they are all pushed up to the GitHub, and I ensured that I pinned the message that gave instructions to the group chats. Okay, so I hope we are clear on that.
Yes, thank
All
you.
right, how about all right, so how about Mahmood, Michael, Jude, Yinka, and Ayobami?
Good evening. I didn't replicate the code, but although I watched the YouTube again, so I would say that.
All right, how about you, Jude? Or anyone that can pick up next?
I did replicate the code and it worked well.
All right, Yinka.
All right. So I didn't do everything in like I did what I could, but I've done something similar before, so I just tried to everything.
All right, Mahmood.
No, sorry. I was not able to replicate the code yet. I was still trying it
All
before,
right,
but I didn't do it yet.
okay, Ayobami.
Yeah, I didn't
Ayobami.
replicate the code. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, I didn't
You
replicate
didn't
the
replicate
code.
the code.
Yeah, but I was able to try
Okay.
to like read and understand what you were trying to do with it.
Okay. So, all right. So that was not very would I say nice to hear from everyone, but and it will be a very good thing that we try and always try and replicate the code. Okay, I want to assume we can clone the repository. You can do different things with it already. So please try and replicate the code. Try and replicate the code because, like I told you from the very first day, you will be taking things from different code implementations. You don't even have to try to replicate the entire thing the person was trying to do. You can basically just read a repository, you can understand how the code is structured. The reason why I started up with showing you how a project is structured is so that I'm understanding what each of the structure is trying to communicate is that I want you to be able to go through existing repositories and understand and try and reverse engineer what the programmer or programmers were trying to do. That's the fastest way you can learn all these things. So there's always a way we structure or we teach code for a class or a YouTube tutorial. There's a way those codes are, the code is written. But if you want code that pretty much serves as its own application, there's a way it is written. There are teeny tiny differences. But you also want to because unless you get your first role, whether it is volunteering or you work with people that are advanced than you wouldn't have that easy access to that knowledge. Or it's one of those things. I'm sharing it as a personal experience from my own end. It's one of those things that I was able to quickly have, and it's really allowed me to quickly move on and understand some ideologies behind the code implementation. So you probably want to think of something like that as well. So reverse engineering is very good. So let's take a look at the curriculum. So if we stopped here, today is basically to talk about databases as well. So databases is what we are going to talk about today. But since we are still doing very theoretical stuff, I think a good idea is to start all the way from the beginning as well and make those points one more time before we talk about the different databases we can use and everything like that. So I'm going to start all over again. I'm sorry for that, but I really want those points to become things that you really understand. I wouldn't waste too much time as well, but let's get started with it. So I told you that when it comes to building applications, different processes are all involved, and I'm sure we all know that there's the front end side. Even before the front end side, you always have meetings with stakeholders and then drawing up the design with a digital tool. And before you draw up your design with digital tool, there's always the drawing on paper based on what your client wants. And then maybe if you want to draw from paper, then you now transfer your idea into a digital tool like Figma for the design. And then when you are done designing, you put it into a front-end application. And then from front-end application, you deploy it as well. And basically, and you try and from the front-end side, the API we are writing on the back end, those API will be consumed by the front-end developers to complete their own work as well. So from the back-end side, you're actually implementing the business logic. So thoroughly understanding what the company is trying to do is very, very important. And there's also DevOps. DevOps is basically talking about when you are putting how your applications are being operationalized. So you are running it on different containers, different environments, and on the cloud and different ways. How your application runs, maybe to a scale of maybe just a classroom or an internet scale, basically. Those things are things you consider under DevOps. And I think I mentioned data science there because just so you know that data science is also involved when you want to build applications as well. It's not fit for every application, but those applications that need it. For example, you're trying to build ChatGPT as well. Your idea of machine learning, they all come together into it. I told you that you could learn from YouTube, from reading books. Books are important. Books and documentation, they are very important because they give you those details that you probably won't get from watching videos or something like that. Basically, just to expand what you know in a bigger way, you could read books as well. Using websites like Free Code Camp on their YouTube or their actual websites or W3 Skills, very important. But the best place to learn is to always carry out your projects, and making use of the existing repositories on GitHub will really, really shine when you know how to find your way. Okay, so we basically talked about how the internet works, and we can summarize it into 4 basic points. Number 1 is your client, number 2 is server, number 3 is database, and number 4, requests and responses. It's scattered on this page you're looking at, but let's just talk about it one by one. The first thing is the client. Your browser is the client. Number 2, the server. the computer you are trying to access, the application you are trying to access is hosted on another computer, which is the server. The client talks to the server responds to the client. They talk to each other. So that particular relationship of talking to each other is what is served through the HTTPS protocol, and basically is how the internet works. Occasionally, I'm sorry to even use the occasionally, almost every time some information needs to be stored in a way that it is always available for use. Basically, you want to store user information, you want to store the company's information and all that. You do that by using a database. And that's the star of today's topic, of today's class. Then basically, when you talk about how your clients and your server are talking to each other, you think of them in terms of requests and responses. Your client makes a request, your server sends a response and a request. So we talked about some backend fundamentals as well. You are always processing data. You care about the server mostly. You're implementing the business logic, and you're always caring about how is your application reliable? Is it performant? Does it scale to a large number of people? And does it keep in people's information secure? So those are some of the things you really want to care about when you are a backend developer. If you are a backend developer. So there is also a general development process. Understanding the problem is very key. You can't build what you don't understand. You identify those things that are required. You may use a paper to jot some of these things down. You may make a mental note. You may make use of notes on websites like Google Keep, Notion, and whatever to write down some different requirements. Then you also decide on the tools you want to use based on those requirements. Today, we are going to talk about how to decide which particular database type we would use. Number four, we have you design the systems architecture. Architecture could mean that are you using a monolithic service or architecture, or are you using a microservices architecture? Your application, is it going to be following the REST principles, REST, or is it going to be following GraphQL? So you think of things like that. And basically what you are building, you really want to you design it maybe ahead. As a beginner, you may not even know what you are designing ahead, but as you get familiar over time, you know what questions to ask yourself when you're building the application. So at the end of maybe by week 8, I will still come back to these things, and you'll notice how you are increasingly more familiar with the logic of these lists. And if you know, you probably are seeing something like that since I keep coming back to it. So the next thing is that you define your API endpoints. Your API is the interface, what you are choosing to show the outside world. That is your API. And one of the things I didn't say initially is that when you think about designing your API, you probably have it as a little bit of a contract, basically, that you are supporting this service and you probably will want to support it for this particular amount of time. Think of it. Imagine you are building an application like say Paystack or Flutterwave. They design their API and they make some and a lot of people from different places are making use of their API. Then they make a breaking change in their API in their interface. They make a breaking change in what holds up their API. When that particular scenario happens, a lot of different applications are going to run into problems. So one of the concerns that a backend developer is going to concern themselves with is to ensure that when they are exposing some part of their code, it behaves in a particular kind of way. The implementation doesn't really matter because that information is your business model or how the business itself works. That information is encapsulated away. You don't want to expose your implementation. Your API is your interface, your application programming interface, your interface to the outside world. When I send get to that, this is what comes back. I care about using that thing that comes back is what concerns whoever wants to use your API. How you went around putting all those things together. If you like, use 15 different functions to come up with that. That is your own implementation. So the API endpoint is very important. The database model you are going to use, that's the block of information for your database and how data flows from one point to the other of your application. Those are the things you kind of want to have logically clear. And then implementing business logic is, basically you test the API you've written and you log things out as well. So you are always logging things that go wrong, things that go right. You want to actually see them in action. You document your code. Basically, you document your API. In order to make use of this Flutterwave API, this is what you need to do. These are the kind of response you get. These are the kind of errors you get. That's very important. Then, of course, as you are writing down your code, you're writing down your idea, you come back to a key phenomenon of planning for scalability, reliability, and performance. You debug and refactor your code. You deploy and you also maintain. So we talked about what APIs are. They are basically like your interfaces to the world. It connects your endpoints to the system of requests and responses. Your endpoint is your route. Where exactly are we sending this particular command to? Or where in your application? If at a place called register is an endpoint. www.this/register, that is an endpoint. So when I send a request to that endpoint, depending on what kind of request it is, what happens? So what happens is your implementation. So what comes back is your own response, is the response of the system of the API. So that is what we talked about there. And then I told you that a key assumption for this class is that you are, to some good extent, familiar with JavaScript. Your functions, how to declare functions, how to write variables, how to import, how to export, how to do some control structures, like your do while, your loops, okay? And your very, very importantly, your asynchronous JavaScript, your promises, your async awaits, very, very, very important. Then that concluded the first class that we had. And then I went on the last class to talk about, I started going into the JavaScript world. I told you about Node.js, the runtime that we are going to, that our application is being built on. If you care about the logic, the philosophy, or how Node.js came about, you can check the internet for that. So then we went into, we talked about your Express.js. So Express.js was, what's it called? Is a framework built on Node.js runtime. So Express.js allows you to build your backend applications. That is what it is. We use your Express.js for. So one of the things about it is that it is fast and unopinionated. Unopinionated means that it plays with a lot of different ideas and libraries. People can make use of it in their own particular way. Okay, so it depends on you to do what you want. It doesn't really come into your way, and it doesn't really come with a lot of bloat as well. So when you install Express.js, it's basically shows you, it gives you a, what's it called? It gives you a kind of a clean setup that you can make use of, and it doesn't really install a lot of many things that you wouldn't need. Because at the end of the day, when you deploy your application, you want your application to be light and performant. You want, when you are deploying it to, shouldn't be a very big application. Think of it, when you want to install a certain app from Play Store or your Apple Store, your App Store, and then it is like 1 GB big. You think, oh, what is going on? Of course, it's almost as if big apps are not very performant. That's what you'll be thinking. Okay, so you kind of want that your application to be very light. So Express is good enough for that. So that's what we will be using anyway for this track. There are different frameworks as well. You could also take on Nest or Fastify. Those ones who maybe if we have the time, we can show you some key differences and philosophy between how what they're trying to do with those ones as well, or why they even came about in the first place, if Express is so good. So the third thing is your HTTP methods. Your methods are your action verbs to your API. Do you need something, you send gets? Do you want to process something, you send posts? Are you updating or are you deleting? So those are the things that you want to care about in those are your HTTP methods, which we talked about in the previous class. Now your response code as well. Your response code is basically when you send a request through by the combination of your HTTP method and your endpoints. So this is it again. A request is basically a combination of the method, that's HTTP methods, these ones, and your endpoints. So you can see, so that's what makes up your request. As far as and different things come into place, like your header, your authorization, different. Don't worry too much about that for now. But your methods and your endpoints, they bring about what we call a request. So when you send it, that is how you get something back, and that's things that you get back. You get the body of your response, and then you also get a code as well. So those codes tell you what happened. Oh, was that thing you did, was it successful in doing what you want? Did it create something? Is an error return? What kind of error, if so? So those are part of your HTTP response codes as well. So those numbers you see there, as a developer, I showed you in that class that you could actually do things in a funny way. You could break the rules of what they said, basically because you have your request and response, right? So we could flip them around because Express is not really particularly checking that response is your request is a request, your response is a response, and blah 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 like that. You are not basically like doing that here, but you kind of want to ensure that things actually have their own meaning. You don't want to send things that don't make sense. So in essence of that, I could actually make the code of this thing return a 404, even though the thing is actually correctly done. So let me even see how that works. Okay, so to end of that class, I think I showed you how to use, sorry, okay, I'm not in the right place. Let me see. I don't know why I keep on making this simple mistake. Okay, so npm starts. So I showed you we installed NodeMon at the end of the class and basically told us that that's how we know that our application, we don't want to always restart our server when you are working on your application. You don't want to always restart the server yourself. You want something to always do it for you. So that's why we installed NodeMon. So when you come here and you press your send, that means that tells you that our server is active on a certain port that is the 3000. So when you write it and send it, everything works, right? 200 basically work. But if I come back to my code and modify it to say rest.status and say 404, something that is supposed to mean that something is missing. We told you that 404 means missing. So but when I save it, what is this? Out. So when the server has basically restarted, and if I send that same request again, it should bring out a 404, despite the fact that the job was done. But you really don't want to have this kind of scenario because you are things that are supposed to work are not being you're not doing them basically. You are not, it doesn't make meaning. So you probably don't want, you want to stick with the defined conventions that we have. So that's about that. I was coming to that about your HTTP methods. So we can always read up on that. The popular ones are 200, 201, 404, 500, and the likes, basically. We just check Google and we are good. So we also saw how to start a simple server using your, what's it called? We wrote one with normal Node.js without doing anything. That's basically what, without installing any package. And then we wrote one using Express library itself. Okay, so those are the two different examples. I think a good idea is to actually make this simple server, this simple.js. Let me make it out of the repository. Let me move it out of that one. So simple server is basically your entire standalone Express application, as simple as it comes. Okay, so that's what you have over there. And also, yes, I forgot to mention this thing as well in the last class. Thank God I remember now. In your package.json, whenever you install something in Node.js, it doesn't install it globally unless you specifically tell it to do so. It doesn't install it globally. It installs it locally to your application. Okay, so that's what we have here. So when you install Express, it doesn't mean that. So it doesn't mean that you could basically just start up a new project and start using Express like that. It means that this Express is local to simple server. And the reason why we said this one is a dev dependency is because we don't want it as part of our deployed application. It's not necessary for wherever we deploy it to install NodeMon as well. Remember when I said something about your application size. So when you are deploying it, you don't want your server, I mean, you're not going to be restarting your server based on any tool or you're changing anything over there. So you probably don't want to think about installing your NodeMon as part of your normal dependency. This means that it is specifically for development purposes. And a good idea is to actually not have to manually start up your server yourself. You could always come back here and make a script. Script is not just for basically starting your server or stuff like that. You could want to do different commands into this as well. So basically when you wrote start, it's basically just to npm start. It runs the start command. And to make it clear to you now, that npm start is actually kind of like a shortcut that actually basically says npm run starts. That's the basic full thing there. It's saying npm run starts. So that's how it does the same thing. But say, for example, you change this start to something else. So basically, maybe like you like to speak English and just say proceed, something like that. And you do something like say when you do that, it doesn't restart the server. It's one of those things you should know. When you edit your package.json, it doesn't restart your server. NodeMon doesn't pick it up as a change to your application. It doesn't do that at all. So you need to break the server to see what happens. So you can do so by doing your Control-C, terminate the whatever is running. If you do npm start, it won't work because you've removed the start from your package.json instruction. There's nothing called start there. But if you do something like npm proceed, it won't work as well because there is no command. It doesn't know what is called proceed. It's not part of what your npm, your node kind of recognizes, right? So but if you do npm run proceed, it works. This is what we were expecting to work. So that start is one of those keywords that is kind of basically it works. It's one of the very few keywords I would assume that just works as a shortcut because you probably want to be writing it over and over again. But a good thing to note is that the full thing is npm run start. npm run start is the full thing. Okay, you may have different things. If you come from the front-end world, you might have seen npm run dev, npm run prod, like production. You could also have something like this, basically dev, to say something, maybe, sorry, you have to put a comma here. So dev, say something like la 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 la, or something like that. Or you could also have basically a command. You could also have prod as well. Basically, you may want to have different environments and maybe you basically don't want to test in production. Production is basically a standalone place where your application is going to be used by users. So you don't want to test in production. You don't want to even do anything that will be dealing with production. So you basically develop your tools, test them locally. Then when it is done, you push to production, basically. So those are things that you kind of want to know, but you will be seeing more of them as your application, whatever is building up basically. So I guess that is that. We saw how to structure a project as well, but I'll talk about that more and in a minute. Okay, so I will come back to this though. I will come back to this. So let's take something entirely new for today, and that's your databases. Very, very, very important. Okay, so I don't know where we all came from in terms of our understanding of computer science terminologies and different languages and frameworks. But what we do know whenever we hear about something called a database is that it is a store of data. We want to store data in something or somewhere. We make use of a database. And we have basically two different types of databases. We have the relational databases and we have the non-relational databases. So let's talk about them a little bit and why you kind of want to bother about the different databases kind. So the first one is your relational database. When you think of your relational database, you think of it as a table kind of system. Say, for example, let me Google things I can use as an example, relational database system. So we have a table, row, and column. So let's make use of this as an example. So let me show you this. I don't know if it is really showing well here. So say, for example, we have a basic, we are building an application for a school. You want to have things about students and also for their courses as well. So you have your tables, your table, row, and column. Those are the things you want to think about in relational databases. So of course, we know that a row is your horizontal moving around. Okay, so this one Sam is your first row in this student table. We have three tables in this diagram. We have students, we have student courses, and we have courses as well. So students, student courses, courses. Those are three different tables that we have. So on the student table, you have two columns, ID and name. ID and name. You can think of them as the information that your database is going to process for students. You only care about name. So you have three rows in your student table. One for Sam, two for Mary, three for Tin, Abitine, or whatever. So that is that. We have table, columns, and row as well. On the student courses, we have two different columns as well, student ID and course ID. And in the course table, we have ID and name. So the thing is that when we talk about ID now, we have two different kinds of ID. ID is just short for identifier. Okay, so if we have two different kinds of ID, we have the primary, sorry, we have the okay, I meant to even say a key, but when we say key ID, they are basically kind of the same thing as far as my talk is concerned. So an ID is the identifier, but we mostly talk about them in terms of keys, KEYS in relational databases. So we have two kinds. We have the primary key and the foreign key. So primary key is local to that particular table itself. So students table has the ID 1, 2, 3, and yeah, courses has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when a table is referring to the key of another table, we are going to be talking in terms of foreign keys. So these keys that are there in these students' courses now, like this 111, 2233, they are not the keys for student courses. They came from the student table, and for the course IDs, they came from the courses table as well. So those are your, what's it called now, your foreign keys, because they are foreign to the student courses. So that's how your relational databases work. And a good way of thinking about a good way to actually use your, not even a good way, the way to use your relational databases is to use a structured query language, which is or what we call SQL. Some people say SQL, some people say, I say SQL. I don't know what those ones are trying to achieve. So this is SQL. It's just the standard language for accessing and manipulating databases. When they say databases, they mean the what's it called? The relational databases. When you're looking into it, you think of this thing. It has some popular this thing that it allows you to do. Select from, where, and group, and insert basically. So from the name it has now, you select from stuff, you select something from a table, or you could insert something into a table. So those terminologies, if you study SQL, you find that it is really very easy to grab. So that's one of those things that you need to know as a backend developer. You need to be familiar with your SQL. And there are different implementations of this SQL. I think we have MySQL. Okay, so this one is one. MySQL is a relational, it's an open source relational database management system. So MySQL. We also have what's it called? I think there's one from if you have an example, I can't, okay, let me just do this. Examples of SQL databases and whatever. All right, yeah, so we have these ones up. We have MySQL, we have PostgreSQL, Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, SQLite, MariaDB as well. So all these are different ways that, different examples of the SQL databases. The language to query through all of them are majorly, it's basically, they're all based on SQL. So there may be different behaviors between how one does things, but majorly they kind of have very similar syntax and whatever. Very, very, very similar. Okay, so it's just all about picking one vendor over the other. So basically, these are the examples that we have. So the one that is very, very popular is MySQL, and this one, the PostgreSQL. Okay, so that is that about your relational databases. The two things you are taking away from there is that you think of your MySQL, you think of your relational databases as being table, columns, and keys, and rows. Table, columns, and rows. Let's check it again. That's what Google is basically going to tell us. Tables, columns, and row. Table, rows, and columns. Okay, so basically that's a key takeaway from there. And the second thing is that we have different, it's based on having a structured query language. And we have different ones. We have the SQL, MariaDB, PostgreSQL, and others. So say we are using PostgreSQL, you probably want to ensure what you are learning is basically specific to PostgreSQL by reading their documentation. So that is what well, it's very easy. You pretty much quickly pick up on it basically. Okay, so that's that as well. So the other kind of databases we have is the non-relational databases. So before we compare them, let's see what the other one is all about, or why it even matters as well. So the other kind of database is, like I said, it's the non-relational one. So in this case, we don't have tables, we don't have rows, and we don't have columns. Okay, so the history goes on that before the like the internet, web applications, basically blah blah, they became very, very popular and ubiquitous as we have it today. There were different people trying to solve the problem of storing large amounts of data for the purpose of the internet. When you're a business and you're processing information of millions of people, and you want ability to insert, to update information, to get information, and all those things, you really need to think of a way of doing it. So relational databases were a very good idea that scales. The other part in now is also the non-relational databases. And basically, their own concern kind of deals with what if you have your data distributed in different places? What if your architecture for your relational databases is not exactly what your application is requiring, and all those different technicalities like that. So they went ahead and they made their own research, they made their own design, they made some couple of compromises and assumption, and they also built up their own implementation of what a databases could be. And a very popular example of that is MongoDB, which is the particular one we will be using in this track. I will be going about I will walk you through the reason why in just a few moments. But we'll be talking about MongoDB. We'll be using MongoDB here. And why are we using, and sorry, what does relational databases have to do with all these things, or how are they doing? If your relational databases are using tables, columns, and rows, what is your MongoDB kind of doing? Okay, so examples of, so we have something called your documents. Okay, so let me show you non-relational database. I should have written these things out. Sure. So it doesn't use the normal table, and we have what we have as what? Your table, your, what's it called? Your document, or this is cool. So the document means that you write things in this particular kind of JSON format, right? Your JSON format for your files. You have your ID, the same information in different places. Your ID, your name, your surname, and age. So the same information that is here, you can represent it in a non-relational database as well. One of the key things is that you need to know is that in a relational database, you need to have a consistent way of representing your data. So that means your ID, your name, your surname, your age. Every time you're inserting your row into a new row into your student table, it expects these properties, this ID, name, surname, and age, unless you've told it that it can accept null values. And in those cases as well, it will insert null in that information that is missing. Let's say we want to introduce a new student's name in this list. For example, his name is Mohammed. Okay, so number 3, Mohammed, surname Ali. So Mohammed Ali, but we don't know what his age is. Okay, so we could just, if age is not so important in our database, in our application, we could just say null. So that means this particular table, this particular column, age, is one of those information that we make it that, oh, it could accept null values. So if you don't pass anything in our insert instruction, it will put null in place. That's a relational database. As for a non-relational database, the schema doesn't matter. That particular thing I just said is your non-relational database is not strictly checking it. We have different implementation of non-relational database as well. MongoDB is one. I'm trying to remember another one off the top of my head. But an important thing you should notice is that for MongoDB is not strictly checking. You could have one document to say this, and you can have the document to say another thing entirely. Maybe you are storing a student's information in one document. So those are what those things are called. Anyway, that information between your curly braces, one curly brace is called a document. I don't know if I mentioned that. It's called a document. So this ID one, name John, surname Brown, age 19. That is one document. And for Emma, that's another entirely different document. I could put something, maybe I just want to create an entirely new document in the same collection. So that's what it's called here. We call it a collection. A collection of documents, a group of documents is called a collection. So in this case, this is a student table. This is a student collection. So I could insert something here. Maybe I could even bring something. Maybe I could just create a new document there and ID. Maybe I provide an ID, but if that thing doesn't have name, surname, or age, maybe like let's use an inanimate object here. Maybe let's use Microsoft. Okay, the name applies to Microsoft, but surname does not apply. Age could apply, but we could also have things that don't apply. Maybe we could put founding dates, number of employees, and everything. It would fit perfectly well into your non-relational database. When you try it in your relational databases, it will be giving you all sorts of errors. Basically, you can't insert such a row into that table because it doesn't have columns that this one is expecting, and it has more columns than your table is basically expecting. As for your MongoDB implementation of non-relational database specifically, those things are not being checked. As a developer, you kind of want structure for your stuff anyway. So you kind of want to ensure you want consistency. As far as one particular collection, it's like these particular students, you want to have consistent things. You kind of want to have it in your application because you cannot be checking for things that could exist or could not exist. That means your application is unpredictable. You cannot predict when something will exist or not in the same place. So you must force that structure to be there before anything gets into your databases. So that's something you may want to think about anyway. So, but a key takeaway is that we have two different database implementation: relational, non-relational. In relational, we have table, columns, and rows. In non-relational, we have collection and documents. Your collection is a group of documents. You can say a collection is a collection of documents, basically. So that's what we have there. So just as PostgreSQL or any relational databases have a way to properly query them, your non-relational databases have the same thing as well. For example, you could say you want to learn how to use Mongo. For example, to check Mongo documentation, MongoDB documentation. It gives you how to properly use your MongoDB in your listing. But majority of the time, when you're building a backend application, you are not going to be writing your raw database codes. We're going to be using something called an object relational mapper or your object document mapper. So they are basically kind of the same thing. Okay, so when we talk about relational databases, we use an ORM, object relational mapper. When you're using your non-relational databases, we're using an ODM, object document mapper. Okay, so that way you can write your code without thinking so much specifically into the way your database works. So that's what we will be using in this class, in this thing. It is beyond the scope of this class to be teaching you how to properly write your PostgreSQL or your MongoDB. That's not what this class is meant, or this program is meant for. We want to teach you how to go along your way. So an example of this helpful tools is something called Mongoose. So Mongoose is a very interesting one, and it is used for MongoDB. I don't know if you've not seen the relationship between the two names that we have here, MongoDB. So Mongoose, MongoDB. Okay, so Mongoose is a object document mapper for MongoDB. You could even just say ORM for MongoDB. It's terminology. So we care about being correct when we say things, but people use terms, misuse terms anyway. So that's the idea. And when you look at a built application, let me show you what we will be building at the end of our program. You realize that those things are kind of using Mongoose is very much easy. Okay, you have an idea of what it does,
And whatever you don't know, you can always just come back to it. So, for example, in this your user schema or user collection, I'm collecting several information: first name, last name, password, email, phone number, gender, if the user is verified, and blah blah blah, 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 like that. So MongoDB allows me to create what they call a schema. A schema is basically like a structure. Sorry, Mongoose. So I said something about maintaining a structure still for your application. So that is how you kind of want to create a structure, by creating what is called a schema. This schema is not strictly, can you guys still hear me? It looks like the connection is breaking on my phone. Okay, I can see it's still typing, so that means activity is going on there. I don't know why it's breaking. Okay, know what to do. All right, I should be back. All right, so, but then the thing is that your MongoDB is not strictly following this schema. It's not strictly following it per se. If you put anything that is not supposed to be required, that is not supposed to happen there, it will still take it. That's how your MongoDB works. But it is left for you to kind of put those control in your application there, that you must, if a child wants to misbehave, you are the kind of person that you kind of put those rules there in your application. So you may be seeing, when we start implementing this project, you kind of see something like validators, so that before something even comes to your database at all, those things are properly validated. And you may also want to check. There's also something like, before I even move away from this side of things as well, again, you also want to have something that when somebody is getting something back from your database, you kind of want to control what they are saying. And those are the things like things that you have here. And this is one of the beauty of, like I said, using what was it called? Um, checking into your GitHub repositories. Depending on what video you watch, they may not specifically tell you on YouTube like that you need to care about all those things. So if you don't have that in your mind, and you just return things in your database just for like that, it will bring up so many things that you probably don't want exposed. Okay, so that you are storing them for the company that you are working for, whatever, you're storing it in the database. If the company likes, it could query that information elsewhere, or an existing service in your application is using it. But if you just show them everything, everything will just be there. Your browser could be seeing everything, and people that knows their way around all these things, they could use those information in a different way. So you probably want to put that as a concern, but it's something I was going to get back to. I just remembered. Okay, now, so but the main idea is that, the key takeaway from all these things, that we have two different kinds of databases: relational, non-relational. And so we are using MongoDB in this particular track. And to use MongoDB, we will be using Mongoose, which is an ORM. Okay, so we'll be teaching you to set it up. Let me see. Okay, I think we can have a session on setting stuff, something like that up. Okay, so one more thing is that, oh yeah, what is the difference? When do I use which? When do you use which one of them? And why did I decide that we should use your MongoDB in this application? So number one, MongoDB is very easy to set up. As a beginner, you probably really enjoy using MongoDB. Okay, so because you are building toy projects that you are not deploying, or that is not really serving a business need, so you really want to quickly get something easy like that. And also, since MongoDB does not care about your schema, as in all those information you're putting, you kind of can since you are not a developer, someone that has a lot of experience on the back end, you kind of can just build up your application, first name, last name. So you don't have to think so much about, these are everything that these are all the information that a user is supposed to have. You can just put those things that that you know, at least for now, so that when you are building your application, oh, you realize that this thing is required, you add it to it. Okay, I'm not saying that is not possible with PostgreSQL, but because PostgreSQL is checking for that table information every time, you need to be basically making migrations. There's this kind of a way it does it that is not very so as easy as in the case of MongoDB as a beginner. So I feel like as a beginner, you can learn MongoDB so that you know how it's adjust to how you are picking stuff up. That when you're making like going advanced, you can now like focus on what's on how to use PostgreSQL. Okay. So another thing is that if MongoDB is so good, user friend, I mean beginner friendly, and so on like that. Why do we need to use your relational databases at all? So to answer that question properly, you need to really get into how databases work, what kind of data your databases is well optimized for. Okay, so and that is a discussion on application design that we are not really like talking about here. Okay, but a good idea is that when you have a um different, how would I put it? I think let me just skip on that, or we can basically just use a simple answer online. But I really want to break it in such a way that you really get, and I'm not even really forming my words now. So let me just get back to you on that. Why? But a good one of the requirements you need to make is that you pick what you are using: PostgreSQL, MongoDB. A lot of companies are using these two databases. In recent times, I've seen some people saying they are moving the application from MongoDB to PostgreSQL and thereabouts. Well, it's fine. Okay, you don't need to worry about that as a beginner at all. Just pick something and learn well. The company you are going to work for is going to be in charge of that anyway. Your own is to write application and decide on and follow the specification that you are given. So before we talk about this structure again that I left here, maybe a good idea is to move it to the last thing again, is to talk about what we do in databases itself. What we do in databases is that we do CRUD operation. I used to say CRUD or fraud, whatever. CRUD. You create, you read, you update, and you delete. These four simple things is the kind of engine to a lot of backend application. CRUD is not the only thing that comes to backend, but I used to say something like CRUD is all you need. CRUD is all you need. Please don't basically like take that technically or take that more seriously or whatever. But a lot of things going on the back end is all about is CRUD. Unless you're building very, very specialized application, say you're building the next Netflix. Okay, in Netflix, you need to care about streaming, how those things are being delivered. But let's keep things, I mean, we are beginners. We are not building the next Netflix with our simple ideas that we have here. Okay, so CRUD is where you really need to think about and in your backend, in your curriculum, I left some space for talking about more things that are not specifically on CRUD. Okay, so we will be talking about them on later on as well. But what does CRUD mean? It means those create, read, updates, and delete. Create means you want to create a new information in your database specifically. So CRUD operations relate with your database. A new user comes into your service. They want to make an account. You will create an account in your user base. So just like I showed you for user, you create a new user there. My application is for, this application I'm showing you is for a vehicle carpooling platform that I showed you here. And the front end is here. I'm trying to make the front end again because I'm not very solid on this thing. So, but then the thing is that a new user wants to, for a complete what's it called? World of vehicle. You need to create a new vehicle. You need to create a new trip. You need to create transaction. Okay, so all those things are going to what? To be created. Okay, so you have to put all those things as what? You're creating them. Your read information needs to be fetched when your backend, when your front end wants to check if a user is logged in, those things that information needs to be checked anyway. When you want to check a certain trip information, that information needs to be checked. When you want to do anything, you check by getting a read updates. Okay. So the next thing is also what update something. Sorry, I said a read update, a read operation. So your update means that you want to update an information and a database, and you also want to delete some things as well. So you will see that this CRUD operation kind of ties in with your HTTP methods. They kind of have the same terminology. So whenever you want to say you want to create something, if you want to create an account, majorly you are telling the database to go and do something. So you probably want to process data. So majorly you kind of want to send a post request for that. So post request ties in with your what? With your create operation. Now read, you want to get an information, you want to see that information. You mostly want to use your what? Your get operation, your get method. Your updates, you want to update a service, you could either use, like, basically you use patch, but again, put basically means to insert into, to put something here. Well, I've seen both of them being used for updating operations. I mostly use patch anyway. So then the last one is very beautiful. Delete is called delete as well. But a good distinction is that they are not the same thing. These are just names for operations. But also, like I told you, like we are crazy people. We want to break things. HTTP methods do not specifically say that this is what is going to be done. I could go and use a delete function that is actually doing something. It deletes HTTP method, but it's doing something that will get something. Okay. For example, here, if I update my code, yeah, this your server, or say that index.js. If I replace this thing to delete, eh, meanwhile, it's sending something back and the server has restarted. If I change it to delete, it will tell me that hello world, nothing is deleted. The wrong error message is saying is report this thing because we told it so. The wrong this thing is there too. So because that part of the this thing is not it's not part of what your application is specifically checking. It's actually the function that is there. But you kind of want to build things that stick to specification, all right? You don't want to do things that, oh, this is not what people are doing, and this is no, you don't want to do that. So you want to send this as what? As gets. Since the application has started and I did not define a delete anywhere in my application you are seeing. If I send out a request again, I will get a 404 this time around as wait a minute, what's going on? Oh, sorry, this is get. If I send it here now, I will still get a what? A 404, but actually the return is not what? It's not getting the delete. You can see. And the reason why we have maybe a confusion, if you're pretty much very smart, you realize that I am still sending this 404 as part of my response. If I get it away from, okay, in my get anyway, if I change it to what get is supposed to be, then if I switch it to get, you won't have that confusion. So this one is actually doing the normal job of a 404 error. If I change it to get now, which I meant to do, 200 is returned. So that's on CRUD operations. So to kind of tap into one of the things again, we are working with Express. This is how you want to structure your folder. But you don't have to follow this. This is a common way of doing things. This is my own way of doing things, and with a lot of people. Controller is where you define things that are meant to be done. Middleware is what happens before your controller. Your routing is where exactly those actions take place. Okay, like here. And your your database is where, of course, we know what your database is. You know where this thing, you define it in models. Okay, I don't usually have a folder called database. So you work with your models, which is where you define your stuff. Your validators is where those things that are coming into your database, are they correct? Before MongoDB go and put rubbish inside our database, because MongoDB don't use to check like that. Services. Services are things that you can put it as miscellaneous stuff for now. Configuration, how your app is being built. Utilities, those util functions that just one-off functions that you just want to maybe like carry away from bubbling your controller too much or for any other thing per se. So I would think majority of time, if I check my code, I've never checked, but I think majority of time, my controllers are probably bringing something from utilities. Okay, like I would think that's the one that is there. That so backend is easy because majority of all these things now they kind of work the same way, especially those parts I'm highlighting, kind of working almost the same way of different. Where your logic is, things are going to be really different. Is your controller. From project to project, your controllers are going to be different. Okay, so that to talk about as well. So, okay. So, oh, these responses, you know what? We will talk about it when we build an application. So let's stay tuned on that. So to end today's class, and to end our theory, let's try and use Mongoose in a way to set up a project that make use of Mongoose. Okay, how we can connect it to our application. So let's see it now. So first of all, what you want to do is, let's start from the basic of from scratch. Okay, so make a new directory. Simple server 2. Okay, so move into the simple server 2. What's wrong? That's what I wrote simpler. Simple server 2. Okay, so you kind of, then you open your Visual Studio Code from there. Sorry. You can write code dot. If you write code as a shortcut in your command window, it will open your Visual Studio Code to the default first view. Okay, to the last view. But if you write code dot, it open where you have specified it to open. If I do that, it's open that particular directory. So I did not want a bunch of things to disturb me here. I want to see how things are going to be doing anyway from scratch. Okay, so we are having a new project now. Out with the old, in with the new. The first thing you want to do is to install Express. npm install Express. Like I told you, it's not a global install. So if I try and write an application that says do kinikon with Express, to give me an error. It is local to that folder. npm install Express. Instruction is being sent. It will create a package.json file. And if you remember everything from this particular my project, it comes all the way from this MLSA folder where an existing git.ignore is. So if I come here one more time and say, okay, ls to list the files that are there. I have made a git.ignore somewhere. Let me see. Hold on, let me go check my file. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing at this point. Where are you? Oh, there's a git.ignore. I don't know why that didn't show up there. So that says node modules. Okay, so for the root of the entire project itself, here, say node modules. So that one applies to all the folders that are there inside the application. So there's no need to create it from one folder to the next. Okay, so it's all blocked from all the way from outside. But you probably don't want to what's it called? You probably don't want to be putting different projects in the same place, right? It's not really the best idea in the same repository. So well, I'm just kind of doing it because we're not building anything crazy, and I want you people to have one single place to copy everything. Okay, so we are back here in the same place now. Okay, so again, we are not pushing your node modules to your GitHub. So you want to create a file, you can call it anything you want. You can say app.js. Okay, like I told you, we can import in two different ways. You could say const app equals require, and this is a JavaScript thing. Okay, it is a JavaScript thing. Right? I was trying to say you about it that day, but it says that it tells specifically that it is a common JS module, which can be converted to an ES module. But I really don't want us to do this. I changed my mind. I want us to import. So we see what's actually being imported. So we could say imports express from express. Okay, so this is the word we will be using. Okay, we'll be importing moving forward. Okay, so we are importing express from express. You can now say const app. We are setting a constant variable because we don't want this variable to change. So to ensure that, just basically say, so const app equals to express, and that's it. So if you check between your, what's it called, the one we currently have and that, you realize that nothing much has changed. Let me see if I can quickly bring that one from this thing. Just show you. I don't want to go through my files again since the entire thing is recorded. Don't want some things to show. So you can see, so the thing is that const app because express this thing, so it is the same thing as we are doing. Okay, so you want to set your ports. So const ports equals let's say 3001, since you're already using 3000 there. And you want to tell it that app.listen. Okay, you want to give it the ports first of all. Okay, I want to write a function that says as at least helps you kind of know something is going on. If you don't put the function, it will still go. It will work, but nothing will write out. So you need to just let's help yourself see that something is going on. Okay, so you can also say something that server started in development mode. I can just write HTTP, not S, just HTTP, localhost, $ ports. So the reason why that works is because I used backticks. If you use your double column and double quotes or single quotes, it won't work with the ports. You can try it and see. So basically, everything, this will start up our server. This is almost identical to what we wrote here. The only thing is that our server doesn't have any way it is going. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is that let's give it a point app.use or get a path and maybe something to just do something so that at least you can see that something is going on. You write a function inside it. You can decide to write your function elsewhere. You could also put it there. You could say something like res.send. I am happily teaching Node.js with MLSA. Okay, so once you do that, you have to come back here and say node. What's the name of this thing? App.js. Okay, something is wrong. Okay, to load an ES module type, set type module in the package.json file. So let's go and do that now in the package.json file. So package.json file, you basically come here and just type this. Okay, so let's do that again. So node app.js. So you can see everything works. So if you try sending it that 3000, that was the first one that did not work. So you can have 3001. You see, I am happily teaching Node.js with MLSA. So we've done that. So that works. Good. So what do you want to do next now? You want to ensure that you could you don't want to always restart your server. And how do you do that? You want to install nodemon, npm install nodemon, but also to tell it that it is a dev dependency. So when we check our package.json file, it has been updated to reflect that. The next thing you want to do is to actually tell that installation, that thing is working now. So scripts, not tell it that starts means that nodemon app.js. So in the other case, we wrote our index. So it does index like that. So that is that. So if you check it now and make any change at all, if I change this one with and Control S, you will see the listing as what. Oh, okay, I didn't even start the server in first place. So if I do end node app.js, it will work using normal this thing. So I need to do npm starts, which we could also say npm run starts. Or so if I change anything now and return that with whatever was there, it has what it's restarted and this thing. So if I check it, everything still works. So what you want to do now in particular is that you want to put your what's it called? Your what's the name? You want to put your MongoDB inside your application. And so how do we do so? Well, I just recalled before we even put MongoDB in our application, because MongoDB will contain some certain information that you don't want to leak into the public. You basically want that thing to only see inside your project itself, wherever you're running it. We call those things like env files. Okay, that's just your environment variable. Okay, so those are key credential that is required for the application to work, but you also don't want to push it to your GitHub. They don't want to, because they will contain your API keys and stuff like that. So you could easily create your your .env file here, .env there. Okay, so this .env will contain those things that you don't want your application to see. But as you can see here, your GitHub is already expecting it to be pushed. It is part of your Git stuff to be pushed. So you want to go to your git ignore file, which I think was here, okay, and just edit it that, it should also ignore your .env file. Save that. Always ensure you do that before you push you add your latest changes to Git. Always ensure you do that. You don't really want to go through the process of removing and then doing again. You can, in case you forget, that's possible, but a good thing is to just have this at the back of your mind. So now you will see that .env is grayed out, just like node module. That's the Git extension here telling me that things are working as it should. So that's that. So in most other cases, you will see that they don't actually always write ports inside this thing as well. Maybe because where you are deploying your application to, your port could be different. You just want to have something to use a decent port for you, even if it's different from what your application is doing there. What I'm saying is that, let's say, for example, we are deploying to this Vercel, and to Vercel, 3001 means something, as an example. So you cannot run your application on port 3001 because Vercel hypothetically is using that port. So what you want to do is that you want to ensure that, your port is kind of put into your application in such a way that Vercel will pick one of its own available ports and give it to your application. And that is how we do it here. We always write something like what's it called now? I say ports equals maybe like 3001. Basically, this is what you want to do. First of all, I will tell you how the other thing changes or whatever. But basically put like ports equals 3001 here. And you want to tell the application to use what? Process.env. So this process.env is part of the using a .env file. So you can now say, what do we call it? You can see I used, is this basically just convention anyway. So you just with .ports like that. Okay. If I run this application now, an error will, so if I run it again, because a change has occurred, so I believe NodeMon should have picked it here. So something has happened here. It basically just told us undefined. Now that we've changed it again, okay, something was even wrong in the first place. We never left a column. Let's put it there here. Okay, so a column. So it will change it and stay there undefined. So what is going on there? We did not tell our Express application that env is existing. Just because you set it there doesn't mean that App Express application knows that, oh, env is going on. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is to install a package called .env by saying npm install .env. Okay, so we've installed .env. It's part of what is installed. But installing a library or a package doesn't mean you are using it. So you need to put it in your application. Okay, that use the distance. So I think it says import .env, a config.env from .env. And I think all you just need to do is to use that function as well. I think that's all. That will pretty much figure it out. It's been a while I did this, so I probably have forgotten. So let me see npm run stats from there. Oh, yeah, everything works. So that's all you just need to worry about. Okay, if you run it on the browser, it works. So those are the things you just need to do. Install it, do your import config.env, and just put it there. Basically, you want to do the config as maybe like one of the first few lines. Okay, one of the first few lines in your application. Okay, so I hope we are this happily learning how the code is coming together and we are still understanding it. Let me see, I have a message here before I continue the last part. Why did you have to add that module manually for it to work? Does it not? Okay, somebody said, does using imports have specific benefit over required? Actually, I kind of think so, but it's something probably when you use require. I mean, I would think so though, because when you say require, you're kind of like requiring the entire thing from that application. But if you use this import thing, it only imports that particular thing that you need. So that's kind of an idea about that. Oh, it's fine. So somebody said, and also this import basically is just, let's just say it's kind of a newer way of doing things like that. Just use imports. Don't think it's, or you can read for the more technical stuff online on that. Why did you have to add that module manually for it to work? It does not come. I don't understand that last part, but yes, you actually have to add it to your Express. You know, when I said something about Express, I told you that it wants your application, it wants it to be bloat free, basically. Imagine if I'm building something, maybe I don't even need any environment variable at all. The only thing I just want to set is ports. If you just want to set ports now, for example, I can now do it statically inside my code, maybe 3001. I basically just want to just put that in my code like that. So I don't need a .env. And since I don't need .env, I don't need to install the package, basically. So that's the idea. And also, at the end of the day, I think I'll show you how to scaffold a project. So scaffold and express app means that you write a particular code instruction, and then it's built the project with the folders and everything that is required to have. I don't really do that myself. I've told you so. I like to build things when I need it. I write the folder and everything like that. But you may be someone that will need something like that. But for this beginning cases, I will specifically not do that. Okay, so we get used to the mental flow of what we're having. I hope that has answered questions. So the next thing for you to do is to plug in Mongoose. So you want to plug in Mongoose, you want to actually come here and just create a new variable and say Mongo underscore URI. Okay, so this tells you that your MongoDB stuff is there. So you want to come here to your Mongo stuff. You can open a new account or you could sign in there. Okay. So this is my own personal account. I'll use my personal Google account to sign up. I should have done this in a private way so that some personal information don't get as part of your stuff, but I guess it's fine.
Why are you turning up? Sorry, I'm getting undefined from my port when I do put
You are getting what?
find.
I didn't get that.
Undefined, undefined.
Where?
And the
Where are you
stuff that
getting on?
I try to import the
Are you saying you are replicating this code right now?
yes, yes.
Okay, so you got undefined when you run your server. All right, so to avoid taking everybody's time, since I can't really hear him, let me just this thing to this. So this is Mongoose anyway. So okay, so let me kind of do that. So what you want to do is that you want to find a way to link up to your application. So you kind of come here to where it says overview in your own place. It will look a little bit different for you, but I guess some things will be the same. You come to here, it says Flutter Zero overview. I come here to where it says connect. Okay, so where it says connect, you come here to where it says drivers. So driver is where it gives you your particular code that can come into your own application. It's available for different languages. So you click on it, you change your language to Node.js. Okay, so actually you want to even set it as Mongoose since you are using Mongoose stuff. Okay, so what you also want to do is come here and copy the MRI. It's giving you a function. Basically, you can basically just copy this function and use it in your code. But maybe you just want to just do things in a way differently. So just come here and just copy the MRI, the URI for the Mongoose database, and come here and paste it in your this thing, in your .env. So what you also want to do is that you want to put two things there. So where it says this angle tag bracket now, it wants you to put your password to your this thing, and to also your account on MongoDB, and to also set a name to your project. That name is going to be here after this slash before the question mark. So since we are trying something here, we could just say MLSA1. So that's the name of our this thing. So as for my password, I will put it off screen. Okay, so I can safely put my password. Nobody try and log in on my and use my store and get stuff for my this thing there. So I will do so and put it here. You remove all the entire thing there. So basically, you just say something like this. The name of your email, maybe aah.gmail.com, and then you put your column, then you put your words, your password. So this one is already there. Akrede Adewale 8. Okay, it doesn't even expect the .com as well. So your password is maybe I love Eba. That would be the password, and then at cluster, blah 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 blah, like that. Okay, so that's kind of what you want to do there. So I'll put my password there and off the camera. So of the screen linking. So what you also want to do is to install a package to use MongoDB, and that is what's Mongoose. npm install Mongoose. So it installs Mongoose for you. And let's say you want to create a simple file. You don't want your application to be so bothered with the configuration stuff. Then you can create a new file here that says config.js. Okay. So in this config.js, you want to write the code instruction to how you want your what's it called, your server to connect, basically. So you're following something like this here. So since we've installed Mongoose, you could come here and say import Mongoose. Okay. So we've imported Mongoose. Let's create a function and say const connect to database. So you want your connect to database to take in a URI. So usually anything you are doing with your database is an asynchronous JavaScript function. And to tell a function that it has to be asynchronous, you use this async function and open your bracket so that you can pass the parameter. We want it to take a URI and then also do this. Okay. All right. So I think you guys should give me a second. Let me take a break and I'll be back. Okay. Thank you. Apologies for keeping you waiting. All right. So, well, okay, where was I? So, all right. So we'll write this thing like that. So you've written a function elsewhere in your application, but you need that function to you need it to basically start just as you are starting your project, your server. You need your database to be active just exactly when you're starting it. So you need your app.js to see your connectDB function. And in JavaScript, we do that in two ways. You could either tell it to do export const, that's in this particular system of doing way, in which you are doing import and not require. You could say export const connect DB. So when we say this is called a named export. Okay, so we call a named export. And the other way we could do it is just basically like define our function and then just export its default, export defaults, connect DB. Okay, so the difference between the two is how your function is going to be imported. So you could come here and say, I hope my mic has been muted because I'm saying something. Okay. So you could come here and say import connect DB. So in the default exports, imports and exports,
there is no curly braces in the import instruction. It basically just takes it like that, just like in the case of Express here. So I can tell that when Express, the package was being this thing, you just simply did what? They simply exported it like the default exports. But in this case, for your config, it was the named exports when they said export const. So if we change it our stuff to export const connect database, we can't do the two of them anyway. So export const connect db from here, it will say, okay, it's still working, maybe because the error has not maybe synchronized, but you have to say something like import this as connect db for that. That's how it works that way. Okay, so what you want to do with this thing is that I still want to use the default export because probably that's the only thing I want to export in this file. So export defaults, connect db. There's no difference to how they import and whatever. Of if I exporting multiple things here in a single file, you probably just want to just say export that, export this, then import it anyway. But if you want to export just one single thing, then maybe just do the export default. So you could say import connect db and we're good to go. So those are things of normal JavaScript that you probably want to polish up on. Okay, so let's write some instructions on how to connect with the database. So this is something you want to say something like awaits. So usually the reason why you are doing the await is because it's asynchronous. So you've told the function itself to be async, and you can say await mongoose.connect. So to connect to the URI itself. Okay, so this await now is a promise. Whenever you do something in JavaScript with a synchronous listing now, you have what we call a promise. So a promise is kind of, think of it as a code that gives you two different kind of scenarios. It's either it fails or it works. So we kind of want to cover for both bases. Like if we use this dot then, okay, they didn't even write that here. But let me show you what I'm trying to say before I even write it here. My config here, okay? I don't think it was there. This is where I wrote it now. So mongoose.then, so dot connect is the URI you want to connect. Okay? So you want to say dot then that if it successfully connects, do this. Okay. Then in case an error occurs, then do this. Do you understand? So that's kind of what you want to do there. So you say mongoose.connect. You could just say dot then, or you could write everything in a single line, doesn't matter. Dot then. So I think we could just do dot then. What's it called? Write a function for that. Console.log connected to the database successfully. If I do that to my code, okay, app.listen now. Okay, so also I think you also want to ensure that when you are running your code, the server doesn't start unless your database is connected to. So you may want to chain these two into one single stuff. Okay, you may want to just put this as well into this. I didn't do that for that code, but this is it here. So first of all, since we are passing some this, let's change this to a backtick. Okay, connected to the database successfully. Then do that as well. Okay, so of course there's a problem. It doesn't know what port is, so you probably want to export the ports from where your thing is. Export cost ports, because that variable is not defined in config.js. This is kind of like a sloppy way of doing things, but I'm just kind of just showing things around. So import the ports that we just did. Okay. Also, that could give us a secular. Don't do that. Just do this. Okay. So basically, let's do all this import stuff and whatever here. Oh, sorry. Oh, when we're building actual, I'm just kind of showing you things around. I hope I'm not losing you. So I want the port stuff to be here. So I'm putting the .env stuff there where I need it. I don't need it in my application listing here, okay? So, and I'm also putting the app stuff here as well. You basically want to use your .env stuff after you've already like used the configure function there. All right, so let's say in the middle of all this, if the server is running, oh, it was never running, I imagine. So if it were running, it should have been giving us an error. Okay, good. So this is it now. We are already having an error in the listing in our work because we told it to listen in the app.js file, but that file is not having ports to be defined. I still don't know why my environment is not showing me some errors yet, but I will check on that basically before the next class. Okay, so what you want to do is that you want this ConnectDB to be imported. Import ConnectDB. Okay, so that's how we did it a bit. So when we said this thing now, this function, I want us to replace it now. This is a function we wrote to happen when it has successfully listened. So let's write what ConnectDB there instead. ConnectDB, and then of course, oh, the ConnectDB is expecting a URI. Okay, so we need to be able to put that URI there as well. And how do we do that inside this? Okay, let's put those config and .env stuff that I took away. Basically, there's a way I do my things, and this is not what I just wanted to just show you. Okay, so to import the .env stuff there as well, and const maybe Mongo URI is process.env.mongo underscore URI. It's case sensitive, like every other listing, so you can see. So that's exactly what I said it does. So if I try, okay, then I need to pass this Mongo URI into the function. I hope things are looking good now. So I should still expect my function to crash. Okay, so for two things actually. Number one, this function is asynchronous. I need to tell it to await it, first of all. So await is how to just tell asynchronous functions to behave. And also, okay, let me see. There's still, did you mean to import .config.js? Did I not do so? Sorry, they're not things that happened before. .js, okay. So rs, okay, it says port is not defined. Okay, so I didn't import the ports that we defined there. Import ports. So where did I define the ports? Okay. I don't. All right, so what's going on here? You know what? Instead of just doing that, just because of that again, let's just write the ports here again. So I did not, I wanted to show you guys something, but it wasn't part of my way of doing things. So const ports is that. So I hope I'm not confusing you here. Do I even need the ports here? Okay, yeah, because I wrote this function here. So, okay, so one more thing ahead. This is where I wanted us to get to. So two different errors, like I said. The first one was because I did not use the await stuff here. And then the second reason is because I you remember the env file, the password is not correct. Okay, so I wanted the password to be correct. So let me stop sharing my screen and then put my correct password safely and then share again, and everything should work fine. Okay, so before the next class, I will bring up a new account that I can use safely without doing any of that. So I have just changed the password. Okay, and I'm free to share my screen again. I think you guys should be seeing my screen now again. So I have changed the password, and if I restart, the right thing should happen now. That's connected to the database successfully, and that the server started in development mode on this. Okay, so if it did not connect to the database for let's say a particular reason, you actually still want it to like at least throw some error. Okay, it's because it has connected to the database successfully, so you still want it to like throw some error. Okay, and you could say, okay, dots error dots is it catch? Okay, yeah, sorry. So basically, or you may want it to just like if that means that's if the promise failed as the listing, you still want it to say console.log for some reason couldn't connect to database, couldn't connect to database. So for let's say for some reason something wrong happened. Okay, so let's say for example I delete my Mongo. Okay, let me just move my Mongo, my .env file away from there. For example, say for example, where's the project? So .env, I move it elsewhere. Yeah, that is not accessible to the project at all. So this is it. Here. This is the project now. env is not there, and I run the project again. So restarts. So we say it couldn't connect to the database because it is not seeing those things. It's not seeing ports. It's not seeing the Mongo URI. So the Mongo URI is giving you the fact that, oh, yeah, I could not see the database. So you understand? So that is what happens when it couldn't successfully connect to Mongoose. So in that case, the server did not even start at all. So if you try running anything, it wouldn't work because the server is not active. So you probably don't want to run your server even though this database is down, depending on what you're trying to do. Okay, so that's the idea to that. So I just realized we are 13 minutes past time. Okay, so let me bring back the .env file that I took away because I put it back where it's meant to be. So that also tells you that even though it is in the same repository, your SQL server couldn't see something that is outside in another place. That's not how things work over here. It can only see things that are nested in it. Okay, so I think that's basically about how to add your this thing. So whatever you're doing to .env though, your NodeMon is not seeing those changes. Your NodeMon is seeing anything that happens to your JavaScript file .js. That's kind of what NodeMon is tracking. So if you do anything to your package.json, it wouldn't see it. It won't see what is going on with .env as well. So in those cases, you just have to just do rs saying that it should restart the app, and then boom, you're good to go. Okay, so I believe that's that. So yeah, that's all I wanted to show you guys today. So we've also replicated what we did in that class. This time around, we added the Mongo URI stuff. So the reason I kind of left this way is because I wanted a simple, I think, okay, when I put the final version of it to your GitHub, I would have made changes to how this function works because I don't want to call this thing 2 times, basically. So just have that for now. And sorry, I think we are good. So let me add everything to the GitHub repository. Oh, sorry, you could also do that from your VS Code. Like I've always said, so you add it, you commit it. So a good idea is to also kind of check the status of your working directory first of all, so that you just kind of catch it that it is not mistakenly pushing your .env file there. So you git commit okay connected to
Mongoose, Mongo. Just call it like that, and then let's push it as well. So it's available to you guys online over there as well. Okay, so I would like to end the class around there, and I hope we've been able to at least change some simple ideas together. And that concludes our beginning and our listing. So as from the next class, we start talking about things called middleware, error handling, and logging. Okay, so those three things are very, very important. They basically don't actually build the things that are going to be happening. They don't build it yet, but they are foundations to how your application will work. So you probably want to think of that first. Okay, so that's kind of the things that you want to have in mind. All right, so any question? Do we have any question?
I don't have any question.
Okay. So everyone, any feedback, updates, or whatever? Okay, someone is typing a question. I guess some people left and some people joined, but yeah, I guess 2 hours is a lot of time too. So both for me and for you. Clinton is typing something. All right, Clinton, if it's possible, you can just use the voice functionality or type a little fast. I'm trying to dismiss the class and I don't know if you saw that, but I need to get up with something else as well. But in any case, others, okay, so the verse says, so I wanted to ask you, sir, so MongoDB does not strictly check items being passed into it. How do we copy that? Oh yeah, so we will be checking, so, and then it's also something I mentioned during the call. I think you missed it. It's something called validators, okay? So MongoDB does not strictly check that you are following the schema that you wrote. You wrote it because you want things to actually have sense and have structure. But also when those things are passing there, you are going to be having something called a validator. So it's going to validate the data you are sending to the database. It's something we'll check about basically. So I think at that point, I think I should dismiss the class. One more final response from Clinton. All right, so thank you, sir. All right, thank you all for joining and paying attention. Okay, so for those that missed, there will be an assignment section this time around. I think I will post it up between today and Saturday, basically. So there will be things that you can easily follow around with. So, well, we'll be chatting more in the group chats. So thank you for the time and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Bye bye.